everyone. For this week, we're going to go over some of the functions from Appendix A, which is right in the back of the book on page EXA4. So whether you're doing the in-person class or the online class, we're going to cover some of the formulas, which you can see on page EXA4. We're going to skip all the things that have to do with tables, and it's not really relevant to the things that we've covered so far, and we're going to get into that. Also in this video, we're going to go through and take a look at project number 1. So either one of those, both of them, should help you get through the project. The project contains one example like this that we'll do a little formatting for. So let's take a look at some of the new formulas that we're going to cover. So the first one that we're going to do is left. So I'll type in equals left, and it will bring back a certain number of characters. So let's take it over here, and I'm going to say 3. Okay, so left, in this case, A2, 3, will bring back the first 3 letters from the left, and that should say EAT. And I'm going to drag down. Okay, it's going to bring back the first 3 letters of all the first 3 letters over here. Now, if you want to have a certain number of letters, like let's say a number of spaces pulled off of this side or off of this side, we'd use left or right. So for example, with this column where we have phone numbers, we could actually pull out all of the area codes by going equals left, bracket, we'll grab the phone number, and then we'll put in 3, and that will give us just the area code, right? So that could be a really useful tool to pulling out the area code from a phone number. We could pull out the year from a date of birth, and so on. It really just depends on how the data is formatted. Okay, so for this one, this is going to be left, and this one, did we do left also? We did. I'll make this one right, okay, and let's try that one next. I thought I was improvising, but I guess that didn't work. Okay, so let's do equals right. And it works the exact same way, right? So I'll grab some text, and I'm going to say 3, and it will grab me the last 3 numbers from, or let's do 4 because it's a phone number. It will grab me the last 4 numbers. And then here I could drag down, and it'll grab me the last 4 numbers from that column. So that is very straightforward. Mid has 3 parts, so mid will grab text depending on where you tell it to start, how many characters in. The next one we're going to look at is upper, lower, and proper. Okay, so we have upper, lower, and proper. Okay, so they're very easy to do. Upper equals upper like this. Whoops, sorry about that. Upper, there we go. And I'm just going to click on the state, which is supposed to be capitalized. It only has one thing in there, and it will take that text and turn it capitalized. Right, so we'll pull that down, and I'll get all the capitalized text. Lower does the exact same thing. In this case, let's do lower, and we'll grab our capitalized text and drag that down. We'll do the same thing and just convert it into lowercase text. Proper we would use normally for names. So like over here where we'd have the first letter of the city capitalized. And if you're using multiple words, it will do the same thing, right? So let's grab Billings over here. We'll hit enter. You'll see it capitalizes the first letter, and it will give us all the different cities with a capitalized first letter. If I have a few different words in there, it will capitalize both words. Okay, so a really useful tool, especially to use in formulas, is something called len. Okay, and len will tell me the number of characters in a text string. So let's say I click over here, and I hit enter. It will tell me that there's 10 numbers, which is what there should be, right? If I drag down, everything's 10. So if for some reason I have a column that all the phone numbers have 10 digits, but one has a 1 before it, meaning it's 11 digits, I could write an if statement, a formula that would automatically sort that one out of the side and remove the 1, right? And then do something else to the rest of it. And I could put len inside another formula to calculate how many letters or how many spaces there are. In another example, sometimes I could only print in an address label 20 characters on the first line or on each line. And if somebody has a really long name or a really long address, I might have to send them a message saying, we can't take that amount of text, please split it into 2 lines. So we could set up len to count how many characters are on that line and then do something about it. So we also have search, which returns a number of characters at which the find text is first found, reading from left to right. So it will find a word and then grab it to the side. We have text, which formats numbers within text using a specified number format. So for example, it will grab a bunch of numbers and format them a particular way, like put brackets around something, or format them, as with a $sign or so on. And then we have trim, which removes all spaces from a string. So if we have a whole bunch of spaces, that we don't need, using trim, it will get rid of all the spaces. Okay, so let's take a look at this particular sheet, which is very similar to the one that we're going to be working on in the project, and see what we have to do. Okay, so the first thing we're going to learn is this button here, text to columns. And basically what that's going to do is take text and split it up into different columns based on a delimiter. That's usually like a comma or a space, and it's very common when you get data that comes from a computer to automatically have those characters in it. That's how it knows to spread them into different columns. Here I'm going to right-click up at the top and press Insert, create a new column. And what we're going to try to do is create one field for first name, one field for last name. I'll grab the column that I have over here of the first name, last name, which is in the same cell. And I'll press where it says text to columns. And you see right now it says Eaton, Elliot, Wall, Elizabeth. I'm going to say it's delimited, and the characters such as a comma or a tab separates each one. And I'm going to say that the thing that separates them is the comma. As soon as I press comma, you'll notice there's a line between them. And this means that this will become one column of first name, this will become another column of last name, or vice versa. I'll press next. That all looks okay, and I press finish. There we go. So we spread basically member first name, I keep on saying first name, member last name, and member first name. Okay. Then I want to have billings, right? I want to have all these billings, Ballantyne, Huntley, I want to capitalize them. So we'll do the same thing we did before. I'll add in an extra column. And in this new city column, I'm going to write equals proper. I'm going to grab whatever's in D and drag it down. And it's all going to be capitalized. Okay, so far so good. That's great. We could even drag this over. And that's good. But if I delete this column, look what happens. Now the thing that I was referencing in the formula doesn't work anymore. So this brings us to the next important thing we're going to learn. Because in here, this is based on a formula, and because in here it just has a word, what we're going to have to do is copy all of these, right? So I could go to Home, and I could press Copy. And then I could press Paste down here, and go to where it says Paste Values, like this. So now it gets rid of the formula, and it only pastes whatever the value is, i.e. the result, the word. Now when we delete the old one, it looks just fine. Okay, we'll do the same thing with state. So I'm going to go to Insert. I'm going to go equals. In this case, we don't want proper because that will only capitalize the first letter. We're going to do upper, and that will capitalize the whole word. And I'm going to press OK. We'll drag all the way down to the bottom. And then I'll grab state, and I'll move that over as the new header. And then in here, I'm going to select all of the Montanas, all the MTs. We'll go to Copy, and then we'll click on Paste Values. That will erase all the formulas, and then inside of here, I only have the word. I could erase the old one, and we're good to go. Next, let's take a look at the phone numbers. So phone numbers we've actually covered in class already. Easiest way to format phone numbers is we'll go all the way down to the bottom. We'll right-click and go to where it says Format Cells. And then we'll click on Special and pick Phone Number. And phone number will format as this phone number, even though the actual numbers inside just stay as the plain number. And date of birth, obviously, we click here, and we bring this down to short date. Right? Or we could do long date, depending on how fancy you want to get. Okay. Okay, so as we work on the chapter, let's look at how we do it the opposite way. So far we've split the last name, first name, and now we want to put it back together, but first name, comma, last name. Okay, so I never know how to pronounce this properly, so forgive me if I make a mistake, but we're looking at page EXA8, and it's concatenate, I think it's how you spell it. So let's give that a try. I'm going to say equals concatenate, and we're going to try first name, comma, last name, and we'll hit enter. And it gives us Elliot Eaton, right? All the names are attached to each other. So we're getting there, but that's not quite it because we have to put that space in between, or even maybe a comma, right? So let's try this. We'll put in another comma, and then we'll put in quote, comma, quote, comma. Okay, so the comma here after B2 and the comma before A2 is the commas that separate the terms that we have. Now we have 3 pieces in here. And the comma in the middle, this comma is actually in quotes to turn it into a text string. So now you'll see it says first name, comma, last name. Okay, so we're getting there. That looks a lot better. And maybe we could add a space after the inside quote to make it Elliot, comma, Eaton, like that. And there you go. So I think that looks a lot better, right? So now we have concatenate B2, comma, and then we have a quote, comma, quote, meaning show this comma as text, and then we add A2 onto the end. So you could actually put in more spaces, we could change it around, and of course, we could always go to insert function and see what's going on in terms of our formula. It tells us it joins several text strings into one string. It gives us an example, and it shows us what to put inside each box. Okay, so once we have this formula in, we could drag it down, and that would carry out the same formula, right? So that shows you, like, so that's one example, right? We could also take, let's say, A2, which in this case is our last name, and we could add a second formula in there, and let's do something like this. Proper, and then we'll add a bracket at the end. Okay, so basically what this will do is it will take B2, which is the first name, put a comma space, and then instead of proper, let's try upper. That should look more interesting. Okay, and this will capitalize the last name in our list. And even though they're backwards here, because we grabbed the first name and then the last name, it doesn't really matter, right? It gives us the ability to put the variables as cells in any direction that we want. In this case, we have last name, and then we have comma space, and then we have uppercase, and we did that by nesting in the upper formula inside of concatenate, right? So and there's a lot of different ways that we could do this. Again, a lot of the text in here deals with tables, which we're not 100%, it's not really important for what we're doing, but it will give you an idea of how to format these numbers, and more importantly, how to work with text, which is really, really okay. So let's look at another formula. This one is substitute. And this is a very interesting formula. It will allow us to take text that we made a mistake or that we want to change en masse and do it with a formula. So here I'm going to click on the phone number. The old text is 406 because we accidentally put in, oops, sorry about that. So here we have the phone number. We put in a comma. The old text, we're going to put in 406 because we made a mistake with the area code. And we're going to change that to 407, and we're going to hit enter. And that doesn't work. And the reason is because this phone number has 2 406s, first 406 and the second 406. So to avoid problems like that, we'll go back into our formula, and we're going to add comma 1. And this means only run this formula for the first instance. Once you change the first example of this, then stop working. So now you'll see it says 407 and 406. So now I'm going to take my number, drag it down, and everywhere where it says 406 here, it now says 407 here. And we could do this with text, we could do this with numbers. It gives us a lot of flexibility to change a systematic error that we might have throughout our document. So that's pretty much everything that we're going to cover right now. We talked about using concatenate to join strings. We talked about splitting them apart. We talked about formatting with upper, lower, len, etc. And this should give you a good overview of how we're going to do text and help you get through the example. I'll make a second video with project number 1 just to explain everything in there, and I'll post both videos into Moodle. Have an amazing week.